What's going on, everyone? It's Mitch from RespectMyRegion.com, back with another episode of the North American Weed Tour podcast, back-to-back episodes. Today, we're moving from the West Coast out to the Midwest. We got special guests coming from Daybreak Cannabis and the Good Kinds Dispensary and a couple other brands, which we'll get into in a little bit, but a vertically integrated operation out of the market in Missouri. How you guys doing today?
Doing great. And
we got the group. We got the group. Yeah. Thank you guys for coming on. We got the group here. So every episode I kick off, I usually start with our guest origin story around cannabis. Since we got the group on camera, I'll let you guys introduce yourself and then share your personal journey with cannabis, or when your journey started with cannabis, whether that's personal, professional, or, touch a little bit of both, whatever you feel vulnerable in sharing here on the interwebs. But yeah, love you guys to go around the table, introduce yourself, and let me know when you guys started getting down with cannabis, man.
Right on. So my name's Kyle Lenzen. Started Daybreak Cannabis. I'm the one of the owners. Got into cannabis actually truly from the medical side. So I grew up in a family. St. Louis is a big town where Anheuser-Busch was here. Alcohol is where it's just part of life, and it was part of my life up until I graduated college. What I realized quickly, and I jumped into my first career was in commercial real estate, developing shopping centers. So really, really, really busy, constant going, a lot like cannabis, and to put myself to sleep at night, I would drink, and I'd wake up the next day and I'd feel like shit. So I started using cannabis, and it was the perfect medicine for me. So that's what got me into cannabis. I started kind of tracking the science behind it. Had a lot of friends that sold a lot of cannabis back in the day. I was probably one of the only guys in my whole group, on my hockey team especially, that didn't use cannabis. But looking back on it, I probably would have saved quite a few years of my life if I would have made the switch to cannabis a lot earlier. But with that, I just really started following the industry. And honestly, I used to be a skater back in the day. That transitioned to snowboarding. And so I was always around it. And everybody was always chill. Everybody was cool. I really liked the culture. Just didn't know how to get into it. When we decided to legalize medical, I put together a team. That was really important to me, that I brought the culture that I was not part of into the company. I had the business side of things. My partners had the legal side covered. We just didn't have the culture. We didn't have the experience in the cannabis industry. So instead of going out and hiring a bunch of PhDs, we went out and found some guys that had been working in the industry for a long, long time that deserved a shot to be executives. And that's how we launched the company.
Yeah. Awesome. I'm Sam Thoman. I'm the director of cultivation for Daybreak Cannabis. I found cannabis I started finding cannabis when I was in high school, but more so really when I was in college. I was really into sports as a kid, won a lot of state championships in wrestling and football. And then in college, was really into wrestling, was really good in the NCAA, and then really stopped liking wrestling due to cutting weight and all the pain you go through and not really having fun in sports. And that's really where I ended up finding cannabis for the most part. And starting to smoke cannabis and get into it, and actually started having fun again doing wrestling throughout college. And then that's where I got interested and started researching into cannabis and everything like that as well. And then about like 2014, I ended up moving out to Colorado just to kind of try to get into the cannabis industry. I'd already had a degree from college and everything, and was working in the oil field in Texas for a sandblasting and painting company as a foreman. And me and my wife decided to just pick up and move to Colorado because we were kind of over that life, weren't really liking it, having a good time. And then I ended up picking up a job with a company that at the time had, I think, 8 employees, one little dispensary and a tiny grow. We get picked up in like parking lots, like in blacked out vans and everything, and drove into the indoor grows to trim and learn everything like that. So I started with a tiny company, and I was there for almost close to a decade, and it ended up growing into a 200-person company with like 36 entities, different brands kind of all over the US. And then ended up finding this team. Kyle and their team brought me out here because I ended up learning a lot in the industry and cultivation. We designed quite a few big greenhouses and high-tech ones over the years in different states. And they designed one of the better ones I've ever seen here in Missouri that puts out some great product for greenhouse and light deb. So that's kind of how I made my way out to Missouri.
What up, bro? It's good to see you.
Yo.
My name is BJ Jordan. My relationship with cannabis started when I was probably 6th grade. Smoking weed behind water dikes in my hometown in Utah. And then I think at that point I just realized that really helped me kind of figure myself out, slow down a little bit, whether it was like ADD or whatever you want to call it back then. I grew up in the snowboard industry, lots of different industries, but cannabis has always been fluid throughout my entire life, from paying rent to, deposits on cars, whatever it took, and got into the legal industry when I moved to Seattle, which is when I met you and Joey Brago and all the homies. Worked with Have a Heart back in the day. I helped run Have a Heart from the time we went rec pretty much until we sold the Harvest. Started doing consulting and working with different people in the country. Had the opportunity to meet a lot of great people throughout the country in the industry, and one of the groups was these guys. And I got a kid and needed a backyard. Seattle's expensive as hell. My kid's like, "Why don't we have grass, Dad?" Smoked it, bro. Anyway, so took the opportunity to, slow down a little bit, if you will. So, but
You better not slow down too much.
Yeah, we haven't slowed down at all, though. That's for damn sure. So, it brings us to today. I'm stoked to see you guys out here.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. Yeah. We were just talking before we went live, me and BJ been knowing each other since 2016, it was like 6-7 years at this point through legal cannabis, and very, very humble, but been a part of seeing Have a Heart go from medical to a multi-state, behemoth, man, and then obviously worked around the country, man. So it's dope. I've been picking your brain about different markets before I even started getting out on the road too much outside of the PNW, man. So always appreciate that insight. Kyle, one of the things I wanted to ask you is, you said you had a background previously in real estate. Obviously that's like highly regulated. It's obviously contracts, paperwork are heavily involved in that profession, but it's also regulated and not just regulated by like a governing oversight, but it changes through municipalities and counties. How much of that kind of prepared you to get into cannabis, where it's, likely more regulated than that, or the stigma provides, but how much of that past experience kind of prepared you for where you're at now?
Ironically, it gave us a huge head start on identifying the real estate for all of our stores, our grow facility. All of our stores are located within a 15-minute drive of themselves, and the grow is kind of centered in between all of it. And this is all within St. Louis, so we're not out in the suburbs. We are in the core part of St. Louis. So, and the way that we were able to do that is, I know the zoning codes. I know what is not allowed. I knew about the restrictions on being next to schools, etc. And because I had the relationships with the real estate, they trusted me. That was a big factor with this new industry coming in. There's a lot of real estate guys that just had no idea what to expect. They didn't know, are these legitimate companies? So that's a huge leg up. Two of our stores are actually all three of our stores are in major power centers that my company built and continue to manage. So getting a landlord to or getting partners to agree to the concept wasn't hard. We had known because we focus primarily on retail. So I've expanded every national retailer that there is out there all around the St. Louis market. I know what the demographics are, but the zoning, understanding how the zoning process works between the municipality. The state doesn't really have any kind of zoning code. It's all down to the county and or municipality. So understanding that process really helped us put together an accurate projection on these stores because we knew it was going to take to get a permit. So that's being said, I had no idea how similar this industry, the cannabis industry, would be to the real estate industry. Every single day in cannabis, there's something changing on you, whether it's a new law, new packaging rule. All of a sudden we got to change the size of the font of all of our packages. It was no different in real estate. So go and apply for a building permit for a fast service and get slapped with a requirement that we have to go through a special use permit, which is ultimately a decision that the county or the city decides, okay, do we want this or not? It's very, very similar to cannabis because of that. So law, every rule that's written by the regulators, which I think they're getting better as they go. They're learning, industry. So I'm not going to throw them under the bus. I think they've done a pretty good job in Missouri. There's been a lot of negative around the way the licensing was done here, and it was difficult. So other things could have been done better. Of course, anything could have been done better. But again, every day in real estate, you're getting thrown a curveball. Every day in cannabis, you're getting thrown a curveball. But I didn't know how to navigate the cannabis curls, and that's why I wanted to bring these guys in. And so far we were successful in getting all of our sites, approved, recreational at the ones we originally applied for, an application process through the state. Very few groups in the state have been able to do that. Most have had to make change requests for locations. And, we've got some of the best run stores. We continue to grow those stores and hope to expand those stores. The way that the licensing works here in Missouri is each group of ownership is allowed to own 5 stores. So we've got 3 now. The goal is to open 2 more, which there are no new licenses, so I'd have to acquire 2 stores. And a lot of consolidation occurring right now. So it's getting it's again like real estate. Everybody's running everybody's running after the same store. So
yeah, and much like real estate, right? The cycles of going from a buyer's market to a seller's market and sitting at the equilibrium for a brief second in time before it shifts, man. Constantly seeing that in cannabis with the wholesale price, or whether it's limited licenses or opening up licenses, we're constantly seeing those shifts. Sam, for you, I think you mentioned, moving out to Colorado in 2014, if I heard that correctly, to start getting in the cannabis space. What originally attracted you to the cultivation side, or did you just originally want to get into cannabis in general and found your way to cultivation?
Yeah, well, I kind of have a background in farming, so my family does a lot of farmland in Kansas, so I know quite a bit about cultivating and most of that and NPK and that work. So that's kind of why I wanted to get into that side. And it kind of started growing in college too. I actually got like a scholarship hold from wrestling in college because my house got raided and we were growing and everything. So I ended up getting cuffed and took to prison and sat in there for quite a while. And my scholarship ripped and got using all my funds and everything. So I took able to come back and wrestle in the NCAA and everything. So I had tried it at that point in time. So I figured I'd try to get into cannabis out there. So I kind of started trimming, was like trimming for like 3 or 4 months, kind of worked my way up through it was like transplant count and then kind of managed like going into flower. And then we had like a small little grow. So it was about like 8,000 square foot of flower at the time. And then we were breaking ground on like 100,000 square foot greenhouse in southern Colorado at the time, getting ready for like rec to fully come on and getting a bunch of stores going there. So I kind of like slowly worked my way up through that company. And then as that greenhouse broke ground, me and another kid in the company were kind of living down there in like Connex boxes, wiring the climate controls in, trying to figure out like floor heat. It was a pretty automated build out with a like boiler like radiant floor heat, and everything was mostly going towards an automation point, and not really many people had done like big greenhouse like cannabis builds at that time like that early because they're kind of still wanting to grow indoors and were scared to go that big. So it's kind of weird and we're down there building it out. So that's kind of how I learned a lot of the cultivation process at the time. Like when they were doing that, we brought in quite a few PhDs. One of the big ones being like Dr. Cloyd out of Kansas State. He's like one of the better entomologists in the United States. And I was from Kansas, so I kind of knew him for a while. So we brought him in, I think in like 2015, when most pesticides were like getting ripped off the list and no one could use pesticide. Up started to finally become a big deal. We brought him in and got a beneficial program going because not at the time, not many people were using biologicals or not really that well known. So he kind of set up the program for us. And then we had some other good doctors like Royal Hines out of Michigan State, a lot from those guys. So I was pretty at the time still probably like 23 or so, learning a lot. So learned a lot growing in that big 2-acre greenhouse. And then we ended up getting another one east of Pueblo there. So we ended up having about 4 acres because we were doing some feminized seed breeding too. So yeah, it kind of just chose me. I was the side I ended up wanting to be on a lot. So I ended up going into business development at the end of that career. So I ended up mostly being in a corporate office and not getting to be at the greenhouse as much. So that's kind of what's nice now is I'm back in the greenhouse quite a bit in the cultivation facility. So, but yeah, it's kind of how I got into it, man.
Yeah, and you guys have a 30,000 square foot greenhouse now. So you personally prefer greenhouse, and then follow up to that, what are some of the benefits and the challenges of growing through that method?
Yeah, I would say that I prefer greenhouse. I guess if it's the right build, there's a lot of difference in greenhouse, honestly. And I think greenhouse comes with like some bad territory in cannabis because a lot of greenhouses put out some pretty, like a lot of mids, honestly, is responsible for that. So I'd say right now I prefer greenhouse on the design we did here. It's a pretty automated build. I've grown indoors. That's how I started, obviously, on like we were mainly medical, like on the indoor side, and obviously the quality difference there you can tell is a lot better. I feel like now some of the better designs after learning doing it for a couple years can put out some quality that's got some pretty good fire comparable to indoor. If not better sometimes, just with terpene tests. Like right now, our greenhouse is putting out terp tests that are 3 to 4%, where a lot of the indoor we're hardly seeing 2 to 3. It's doing. There's a lot of things that go into it because it's like technically, like if you just conceptualize the fact of replacing the rub with like a clear rub glass or whatever and keeping it the same environment and everything and that sun, then you would get that added benefit and that added efficiency to your grow and your cost to produce and everything. So it's like being in like this industry, it's got to be kind of business oriented with cost to produce so you can hang your industry and be in the black and not just burn money like a lot of IPOs do. Because when you're a private company in a small company, you got to be able to make money. So that's really why I prefer greenhouse right now, because I know that with the right design and the right build, you can get those efficiencies out of a greenhouse and still pump out that fire the indoors do. But for the most part, a lot of greenhouse and hoop houses and things that aren't climate controlled and don't have all those bells and whistles, like our greenhouse has HVAC, chillers, with like hot water and cold water going over coils and fans. That's not the same electrical usage as like HVAC tonnage and things like that, and the radiant floor heat, and then getting the benefit of the sun and all of that you can get and get cheaper cost to produce a pound, but also throw out some fire. So honestly, yeah, like in the future, I would prefer greenhouse as long as they're nice builds. Like I think our builds are like a lot like more like an indoor. When you walk into the facility, you're like, I'm in an indoor facility, but you got, you know, clear roof when you're inside it, but you got LEDs everywhere and all this light and everything. So and it's a pretty clean facility. So yeah, I'd say prefer greenhouse right now, but I mean it's like light depth hybrid. I think a lot of the new greenhouse builds you'll see in the future will be like more reminiscent of like an indoor, but like with that added benefit of the sun and some of these efficiencies, you know. So
using the environment, using what God gave us. You know, BJ, obviously you have experience in recreational states, but Have a Heart clearly had, you know, some medical properties in the past. So, you know, you're not a stranger to that previous to the position over there. But what are some of those nuanced differences working from the marketing side and on the retail side of recreation versus medical, beyond obviously that barrier of entry of having to have a prescription or a card to access retail?
I mean, honestly, I think a big difference between medical and rec is just the main campaign, like where you drive. You know, really in medical, it's about getting patients in the door, keeping patients in the door. You've got a lot more narrow of a demographic, you know, that you can shoot from. So a lot of it's patient drives, things like that, trying to get people into the system, trying to explain to people how easy it is. Here, thankfully in Missouri, it's all remote, bro. So it's like a 15-minute at the most digital consultation. It was really easy. So just trying to get that across to people. Where in a recreational state, you know, it's a lot more general consumer marketing, you know, billboards, out of home advertising, partnerships with local businesses with foot traffic, things like that. But, you know, I think the one consistency though is definitely like digital. You know, it's definitely digital because you can target those demographics and those groups and be smart about what you do. And thankfully, man, it's not 2016 anymore because it makes things a lot easier, bro. Like I remember like exporting sheets and segmenting audiences in Excel and then like uploading databases, which like I had to do in Utah, I don't know, a year ago because there's no API connection in Utah, you know. So it really, man, it just depends on the state. You know, I think Kyle said that this state, they did a really good job. I think, you know, it's a big reason why I came here. And I've got hope for rec and everything. Man, a lot of the other states seem to just like not look back. It's not look at the other states that are doing it and how they do it. As far as, you know, let's say at least my scope with marketing seems to be very repetitive. And then really technology has got to kind of catch up. You know, we're super limited because of TCPA regulations and you know, any other thing that touches federal, man. So I mean, I think I just got shut down. I got shut down on Facebook today, bro. You have to help me figure out how to get off Facebook. Like my personal account, I got shut down. I can't comment or anything. You know, it's cannabis, man.
Yep.
So a lot's changed, but not a lot.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, constantly facing those obstacles and those challenges like you said, as the stigma breaks. Like 2016, it was a little bit more difficult because there was no, you know, Jane, Dutchie, those companies didn't exist in 2016. A lot of these SMS platforms didn't exist. Weed Maps wasn't a grown-up business quite yet. It was still, you know, how we found weed on the black market. You know, times are changing, and so this is kind of question. You know, I'll start with kind Kyle, but I know BJ, you'll have some insight to this, and Sam potentially as well. But I'm curious if you guys can give me just a rundown of your guys' house of brands, right? Obviously, it's vertically integrated. The Kind Goods dispensary with the 3 locations around St. Louis, but Daybreak Cannabis is one of the main brands we're talking about today. But obviously, you have a house of brands through the cultivation and through the manufacturing. So could you just kind of outline to me your brands and the different segments of those and where they sit in the market?
Yeah. So Daybreak is going to be our premium flower run. We've pretty much, what we realized quickly when we launched Daybreak is that there's a large consumer base that is really shopping for value. And we decided that we needed to segment a part of our flower over to that value side of the customer base. So we created a separate flower brand called Soul Cannabis. Graffiti, it's cool marketing. Graffiti, we like to call it blunt weed. And it's your everyday, go buy an ounce. You're not buying an eighth. And so that has really been moving a lot right now. Daybreak is, we were a little bit late to the market. So getting Daybreak out and shelves are full, believe it or not, with as immature as Missouri's market is, a lot of good operators came to the state. So we're Sam's putting out some fire weed. We're finally getting some distribution of Daybreak. Soul's been moving itself, and I think we're probably on 60 to 70% of the shelves in Missouri right now with those brands. And then we're getting ready to launch our next 2 brands, which one's an edible brand called Good Taste. We took that brand is really kind of focused on, similar to like an Overweiss, like that home feel. So the first product that brand is going to launch is a Rice Krispie treat. It comes in a 10-pack. They're really, really fucking good, to the point where my wife is telling me that we need to rebrand it and sell it in the grocery stores. So we're really excited about that. We hired a really kind of a well-known chef here in Missouri to work with our cannabis experts to come up with some real good blends, and we're gonna put out some cool stuff with that brand. And then the next brand that we're launching, and these 2 are going to be launching in the next 45 days, is Pinpoint Extracts. Pinpoint is going to be, your heady brand. So we went out and found some OG extractors. We're really going to focus on solventless. Right now we've got a bunch of trim that we're going to run some distillate, do some live, but we'll hop into that solventless category here shortly, especially with the terps that Sam's producing. So we're excited about that brand. There's a couple of brands in Missouri right now that are doing some pretty good stuff, but for the most part, you're seeing the same old distillate and live resin carts. So we're excited to kind of jump ahead of those guys. We haven't done a whole lot of marketing of the brand at all for that reason. I guess now that this is out there, we'll have some people coming after us. But
Thanks, bro.
sorry, BJ. But that's kind of the rundown of the brands. Soul was just kind of came out of nowhere one day. We were just like, let's come up with another brand.
Yeah.
And
Inflation's been bad here, it adds everywhere. So making a brand that people can afford, making a product that people can afford is from the retailers to the cultivators been super important for us. Be able to keep people high, honestly.
And when I say blunt weed, it's not bad weed. It's good weed.
Yeah.
It's good weed, but it's just priced for the consumer.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's really, really important right now. If you are out there trying to gouge customers, they're remembering pockets are shut and there's no money flowing in. So what are we going to do? Well, let's establish ourselves as a long-term brand. Let's help them out. And that's where Soul came from.
Mid-Zotics.
Exotics. No, I love that. And I'm curious, what to you guys is that importance of segmenting these brands, right? Like BJ, you're familiar, like in the early days of Washington and Colorado, brands would come out, a cultivator would come out with a brand, and the only differentiation might be the color. It's the same jar, same name, same everything, different color jar. I was never a fan of that because I think people really forgot that word of mouth advertising is your best or worst friend. And if I'm out here talking up a brand and someone's buying the low shelf brand, meanwhile thinking they're getting the high shelf brand, then they have a terrible experience and they're saying bad things about it, or vice versa, right? Like there's no differentiation between the brands when you have a different target consumer. I'm from the school of thought, like make it a different brand, make it a different product line. There's no need to kind of put everything together. While you guys are vertically integrated, is it regulatory of why the dispensary and the brands are not named the same, or is that kind of a strategic play to differentiate between retail brand and then even amongst the brands?
It was a strategic play. It was not required by the state. My background comes in retail, and if I knew for a fact that I was going to be successful on the retail side. I knew for a fact I'd be successful on the cultivation side when I got Sam, but I didn't have Sam until after I got licenses. So, yeah,
it was intentional.
It was intentional. It was intentional. It was a protection side of things, but I think it's fun marketing different brands. Yeah. You're marketing to different consumers. So Pinpoint's we're gonna be running skateboards with like hanging out with skaters. Like that is that type of brand, and that with my background with my love for board sports, I'm really excited about Pinpoint. Good taste. That is St. Louis is Missouri in general. Everybody knows each other. So even in St. Louis, you could name a name and I guarantee somebody in my family knows that person, or at least the person's family.
First question anybody asks you out here is, what high school did you go to?
Yeah.
Wow, that's wild.
It's just crazy. So, creating that with good taste, creating that home family style food, but replacing alcohol with cannabis was the whole idea around good taste. So again, you're marketing to a different person. And I think that, from my perspective, I don't come from a marketing background, but I love it. I just think a lot of it's logic. And, my degree's in computer science, and a lot of that is, what ifs. So if I like to think 3 steps in advance, and I put myself in the consumer's shoes, and that's why we did this.
Yeah, Mitch, I think, from even, well, sorry, bro. Like coming out here, that was a big reason why I hopped on with these guys, is because they were able to define the retail, the retailer, the product, the licenses. So it sets me up for success as a marketer. I can't say the same for a lot of other people in a lot of other states where they line it all up the same. It's hard to make, especially in a vertically integrated state, man. It makes it hard to be able to sell your product to other retailers when it's labeled the same thing. I mean, that's little billboards for other retailers sitting on your shelf. Mm-hmm. So when you get down to like product being on as many shelves as you possibly can, you really have to ensure the success of each brand individually. You have to look at each brand individually. If you look at it as a group, yeah, you can get a lower marketing budget. You can get, I guess cheaper customer acquisition, but it's just not worth it, man.
Yeah, it's difficult to play the market. Like obviously we were talking about, like Jungle Boys a little bit before we went on, some of these legacy brands that have built a core consumer kind of even before legalization was established. Those are like really the only ones that can come out and drive they have the demand, so they can kind of set a little bit of their own rules. But as we're building these brands, all of it, like myself, even building my brand, right, building stuff from the ground up, it has to be kind of a strategic play with things fitting in how you can get it in, man. So, and another unique thing that I learned, about your dispensaries when I was talking to you, BJ, earlier when we were just texting, is that you guys are still doing deli style. Is that in all of the dispensaries, and kind of what's the approach to that model? Because obviously, Oregon, out of the rec markets, Oregon's really like the only one that's doing that. I think maybe 1 or 2 stores in Arizona is, but even in Oregon, we're starting to see a lot of the dispensaries move to the finished goods, and it's kind of differentiating dispensaries for keeping it that. But what's kind of the inspiration and ethos behind the deli style, and is that at all dispensaries or just one of them?
So we've got it at all 3 of our stores. A little thing so we launched with it. Everybody else launched the state with pre-pack. There might have been a few other stores that had deli style. We came, with some of Sam's advice. He said to us, he's like, nobody's going to know what these brands are, right? These are brand new consumers. So you got this flower that's pre-packed in this beautiful container, but nobody knows what they're getting. And what better way to display brands than to throw it up, open up the jar, let people smell it, pick their fucking nugs, whether it's a gram or 4 ounces, in front of them. And it really created a customer experience that nobody else was able to provide. We created a lot of brand loyalty around deli style. We've battled, change in rules all along the way. The way that the state does their testing, there's some ambiguity in the way the language is written. And the state says that it's supposed to be tested as final format. Well, what is final format? It's not defined. So they approved our licenses with us saying that we were going to do deli style, so they couldn't deny it from us. We had all the procedures in place, all the SOPs that we submitted. But it really creates it's a different experience. You walk into the store and you feel like you're getting ready to buy cannabis. You don't feel like you're getting ready to buy a piece of jewelry. But so it also allows our cannabis specialists to really understand product. When you walk into a pre-pack only store, these bud tenders, they don't know what the hell they're talking about half the time, especially on a new market. You walk into a deli style house, they have to know the product. They got to know the different terpenes. They got to explain what the flower is, because it all looks the same. I mean, it might look a little bit different up on the wall. The THC content might be a little bit different, but at the end of the day, half these people don't know what they're buying. So you have to educate them, and what better way to do it by having an open container of it. And that's what we did.
It's getting to the point too. We all fight the THC game. You know what I mean? It's getting to the point. It's allowing people to understand terpenes like right off the bat.
Yeah, we can educate on terpenes.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's not that it's not the necessarily as a marketer, I hate to say this, but it's not the brand play so much. It's not the THC percentage. It's the product, and flowers. So yeah, and I will say this, Mitch, it's a sacrifice, bro. You know what I mean? It's a labor of love. From weighing pounds consistently to see loss for humidity and everything that could possibly happen, scaling everything.
And for the data scales to be certified every year.
The certification of the scales, the non nitrate powder gloves for every transaction, the wipes so that there's no material from the strain before. It's a labor of love, bro. So it's something that our patients really love, and I think it definitely defines us at Kind Goods for sure. And the way we do it too, I think it's pretty special. It's not, I think a lot of times you see that either deli style or you see that clean dispensary, where it's hard to find the in between or that nice combination of both. And I think we've done that where it's truly clean, welcoming, for everybody. Plus, you've got the deli heady style for everybody. So we've made our patients snobs a little bit.
Yeah.
I enjoy it. Another shit, bro.
Yeah. There's a lot of shops that have gone back to the state and said, "Hey, we want to start doing deli style," and to my knowledge, not very many of them have been approved because they didn't submit it in their application, and or they didn't have the right SOPs on how to operate it. But it's I would not open up another shop without having deli style, unless it was in a really, really mature market and a smaller shop. Where it's just you're doing volume.
Right.
But I just, again, my background in retail is I love customer service. I can't stand walking into a dispensary where there's bathrooms are dirty or there's shit on the floor or there's packaging laying everywhere. Clean, good customer service, and great product for the customers to be able to pick from.
Yeah, how do you differentiate yourself in a pre-pack world? A lot of times, you know what I mean?
Technology.
What have you seen as far as pre-pack goes, like being the most, like the biggest differentiator? It's technology, service, really.
Yeah. Technology, service, displays, right? Like that's one thing I think a lot of dispensaries don't do well is like displaying, brands, or everyone takes their different approach, but displaying products in a way that you kind of, oh, here's all your top shelf stuff, but it's displayed in a way that I'm that type of consumer. I go and look at it. So, but I love, I love the deli style, right? Like there's a part of the marketing aspect, right? From the brand side. Yeah. We'd love to get your colors and your packaging and differentiate yourself on packaging. Me, Mitch, the consumer, like my nose knows, right? Like we all know from like Washington, there's a lot of shit that looks great in a jar. And you crack that shit open and it smells like fucking hay. And you're like, bro, I wait $60, $70, $80 waste. Like, I don't care how fucking good it looks. I don't give a shit what the THC percentage is. This shit smells like fucking hay, bro. And I'm buying weed to taste some fire ass flavor. And usually, I feel like the scent that's going to translate to the flavor more so than look is going to be the nose. There is shit that smells different than it tastes, but if it's got a great smell, it's probably going to have a good taste,
Right.
Dude, it's funny you say that. That's how we price our flower on the wholesale side, and we don't do it off testing. Sam literally sticks his nose in the jar or in the bucket and says, "This is what we're pricing this at, or this is the brand that it's going to," and it's working.
Yeah.
So we agree.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to what you're asking earlier, how we like kind of scale the different brands, make sure that it's not the same shit, just in the same, a different package. There's lots of arguments.
Yeah.
Lots of arguments.
I stay out of them, but
it's good. It's good, man. It's a very passionate approach to where the weed goes.
Yeah.
It's
important to give these guys autonomy. That was the whole purpose of bringing them in. So that, and they're putting out some good weed. It's fun to see. It's fun to see. It's almost on a weekly basis. You do look at those testing results just to see the metrics, and they continue to go up. And it's just it's as the house continues to get dialed in. We opened the house. It was almost a year ago to date. So we've just now gone through a full cycle of Missouri climate, and we still probably, the fall we really didn't even hit it because we were just in prop at that point. Prop and veg. So flower we didn't zone in flower until February. No, it was probably late or early December actually. We harvested in late February. Yeah, so we've almost made the full cycle. But yeah, he's doing a hell of a job. And BJ's marketing, it's fun to watch. He's got some creative shit up his sleeve. The best part about BJ is he always looks at ROI. So it's not just throwing dollars at the wall. And that's where I always am focused on is ROI. with always taking culture into consideration.
Mitch, bro, like back in Washington, Washington to California, at all these states, man, we've seen a lot of people spend a lot of money, and just not get anything out of anything. So, I mean, you guys have done it, bro. You guys have just played that slow, steady digital trail all the way up, which is obviously paid off.
Yeah. Yeah. And for us, we invested in because we have a different model, but it's not the ROI, we put X amount of dollars in, we make Y dollars out, but we've been invested in a different kind of ROI of a brand awareness. Obviously, if we were cultivating, we're not necessarily afforded that, that opportunity, because you have goods that you need to sell and you need to worry about that and keeping it coming in. And, you guys mentioned, right, THC still runs the market, somewhat down there. You mentioned you still have to play the THC game. Obviously that runs cannabis like everywhere. It's like this fucking battle of the highest THC and the not the lowest cost, right? Because you're not going to have the cheapest weed with the highest THC. There's some balance of those minimum that the majority of consumers are going, right or for wrong. Most of us in the industry, say it's completely wrong, but it is what it is. I've started to see in Washington, the top shelf, I've been kind of vocal about this, the top shelf consumer doesn't necessarily care about THC percentage as much as they put trust in brands and quality, the bud tenders of the stores that they trust. If they're really hyping stuff up, they're gonna, the THC is secondary or third, fourth, even down the line. The mid shelf and the low shelf, it reigns true. California, it's like a fucking travesty. Like if you're not flirting with 30%, it's very tough to get your product on shelves, and it's very tough for it to sell. Obviously the deli style gives you guys that opportunity to kind of not have to rely on that, right? Because it's easier for me to convince you there's 18%, but smell it, and you're like, oh shit, okay, let me try that. But for your guys' market, what are you guys seeing with THC percentage? How much stock are like consumers putting in that, and then let alone other stores that you guys are wholesaling to really paying attention to like THC percentage, and what kind of emphasis do they put on that?
I take this one and pass it to you.
Yeah, because I want to hear what you guys.
So I think that it's in a lot of states it's similar, right? It's kind of like the state when it starts, it's everybody's THC percentage. It's just education based, right? And then consumers get more educated, it goes around. I think what's interesting in some of these new states that I've seen is it's this vicious cycle that's kind of created at the top of the top, where the cultivators are actually like listing prices based upon THC percentage, where they're selling to retailers based upon THC percentage. And the retailers are selling, obviously based upon THC percentage, because they were paying different price based upon it. So I think it's a cycle that we need to stop in a lot of these new states. But thankfully, the consumers are becoming more educated on their own, and will buy, what's the best weed for them, what the terps are, what the cannabinoids are, what they want to smell. Yeah, and then I'll pass it over to you to give your opinion.
So I think it depends on the demographic, personally.
Yeah.
When we first opened up our shops, it was a lot of 40 to 75-year-old true patients, and those guys really didn't care about THC at all. And then the younger demographic started getting their cards, and that's what changed the THC demand. So the younger crowd comes in, starts shopping, asking for THC. Well, the shops say, well, shit, we need everything high THC. And the older demographic that was normally shopping for whatever they smelled good to them, all started to say they were forced to buy the higher THC stuff because that's what was on the shelf. So I personally think that it's, it really depends on the demographic when you launch it in a new state. And we are seeing more and more of our patients shopping off terpenes. We list all the terpenes of each strain up on the jar. Put most most of most of the good growers in the state are terp testing all their flower. How accurate the testing are, who knows?
Who knows in any state?
Yeah, I mean, you do put your nose in a jar and something that's testing out at 3%. And you're like, they took a good sample, but then you'll get one that's tested out at 1.5. You're like, holy shit, this is the best smelling weed in the shop. So I think that's why we leave it up to Sam to price our flower off his nose, is because we know that testing is all over the board. But I guess on one hand, we keep seeing our terp tests go up, and the nose keeps getting better. So there is a relationship there, and maybe the testing labs are getting better. Maybe the equipment's getting better, but it also depends on the testing facility, their past experience. So we've got I think like 10 labs in Missouri, maybe a little bit more. And there's like 3 that have the lion's share of all the customers. And it's just because they're ISO certified. And there's probably half of them are ISO certified right now, or is it less?
I think like 3.
3 of them?
Right.
3. Yeah, 3 of 10. So, you would hope that those guys are a little bit more accurate. But that's what I know.
What do you see in other states? Are you seeing THC still be the dominant factor?
Yeah.
Like you said, Cali's.
I'd say Cali, right? Like the whole, you'd like to say the more mature the market gets, the less that matters, right? Because I'd say anyone, again, that's in the industry is in an echo chamber, where we're all screaming it doesn't matter, but somehow, like you said, BJ, everyone's like price, everyone caters to it, right? And there is does the chicken come before the egg, right? Like, are we really doing it because the consumer demand there, or how much are we doing is actually contributing to that, right? I've challenged that a couple times, but I'd say Cali's one of the worst. And I'd also say they're the most mature market in terms of the consumers thinking about branding, thinking, at least asking what is quality cannabis. I'd say that is the most, even though it's not recreationally the most mature, I'd say just cannabis culture and connoisseurship is the most mature in California, but it's also, in my opinion, one of the worst with fucking THC. And then, when I go, like when I was in Massachusetts, I go to these dispensaries, they've only been around a little bit, and I'm like, all right, I'm looking for the fire. And the bud tender is always like, oh, you asked the right dude. So I've organized it by THC percentage for you. And I'm like, fuck, bro, like you're absolutely the wrong dude to talk to be honest. But like, is there someone else that could help me here? Like, this is, I want to leave. And so it's pretty bad.
Do you think that it's mainly the new states, like as they come on, and like you said, maybe Cali, I feel like Cali's kind of a special beast too. It's always been a special beast of its own.
I don't know. I mean, I just think someone had said it to me on the podcast where they said they think, and something that Kyle was saying, like the younger generation, and it makes sense with that. I think it's more of a mindset thing. They correlate value with THC percentage, right? I'm only spending 40, 60, whatever dollars on weed. If I get more THC, I'm getting like a better deal or more bang for my buck. And so someone put it to me like that. And again, while I don't associate with that at all, I can see why, okay, that makes sense why that's like the popular mindset.
Yeah. You buy Everclear.
Yeah, but then that's what everyone's like, you don't buy beer off of this, you don't buy. And I'm like, I get it, but like it's the nuance difference, right? Like, same thing, you don't buy liquor like that because it's all going to kind of get you fired up. But I do know people that, younger people, right? When I used to run a recording studio, like dudes would be in there and they'd be like, yo, these beers are like 7%, man. You only need to drink 2. And I'm just like, I never think like that really, but you definitely hear it with that younger crowd. And I think that mindset bleeds in. But Sam, one of the questions I wanted to ask you, obviously being a cultivator, I always have to ask this is, are there any strains that you grow that you love, but the THC just doesn't quite hit where the market really accepts it fully, just catered to that, and what those strains are?
Yeah, I think one of our better ones right now is Pakistani Citral Kush. So it's been testing around like 14, 15%, but it's got this nice like UK cheese, like stanky smell to it always, and the terps are always around like 3%. But kind of being in a new market, it really sucks because like we throw that up on the shelf, even as like the craft brand. Like it's people are going to see that and be like, what, 14% THC? And I want to pay like the high dollar for that product in this new market. So, that's one of them. We've grown goat for years. It probably needs bread with something else now. But that's always been one that does it too. Golden Goat always like has great terps, comes out nice. Everyone likes it. It just seems to do good in this market. No one really wanted like any of them OG strains anymore in Colorado. Everyone wanted to go for the new stuff, but in a new market here, some of those OG strains still hit pretty good. A lot of people are dropping goat, but that's usually one of them as well. But yeah, I mean, we're getting to the point where we'll be doing some breeding and stuff too. So, I mean, I think that's the goal for any like crafty cultivators to breed your own genetics, pheno hunt, and then send your own stuff out and drop it, and be self-sustainable and make a name for yourself. So that's kind of what we're in the process of now. A lot of the genetics we have now were bred in Colorado and feminized there and brought in to this process. But yeah, those are two of the ones that I never seem to hit the THC you want. But I go and I'd smoke the shit out of some Pakistani and some of those other strains. As long as it's flushed all the way, smokes white all the way through, and tastes terps all the way through, I'm pretty happy with it. But yeah, it's weird. The THC game's a weird thing. It seems like in all markets, like right at the beginning, that's how everybody's kind of shopping. It seemed like at the end in Colorado when I left, a lot of those name brands were able to go to pre-pack, like 710 Labs and Green Dot Labs could go to pre-pack because everyone knew they already had fire and they were going to drop fire strains. But like even then, like Green Dot was dropping 18% and 19% and stuff that barely scratched 20 and people would still buy it up and it'd sell out, but kind of in some of these newer markets, it doesn't really work like that yet. So that's kind of how it's hard when we got to separate our product by brand. It's like sometimes you might have some serious fire, but since the potency is not really there with it or the test result, you kind of got to separate it to the other brand or it'll sit on the shelf just because of the persona that, it's not going to get you as high. And we can't just set on weight, so it kind of has to go to the other brand. So for right now, market's still kind of in its infancy in Missouri at least, but there's a lot of educated consumers still here that have been to Colorado or Cali and seen some of these like crafty connoisseur markets, know what rosin is. So we're excited about it. Rec's on the ballot. Like Kyle said, like, not many people have tapped the solventless game yet here. So we're trying to get on that since we have our own cultivation. We can kind of cultivate and pull things ahead of time, looking at the trichomes and everything, and make sure we get good rosin and grow the right genetics for that ahead of time. So we're really excited to get that going here over the next couple months and everything too.
Fire, man. Well, I appreciate your gentleman's time joining us and flexibility with today. Is there anything else you guys want to plug before I get you up out of here?
Plug Arthur. What's up, Arthur?
Oh man, appreciate it, dude.
We're good, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I love just having, hearing the stories. That I think that's really truly helps break this. I'm a nerd about business and learning. So selfishly, I mean, this is content we're putting out for other people, but selfishly, I just love learning. So I appreciate you guys sharing. For people looking for more information, daybreakgrows.com. The Kind Goods is the flower brand we've been talking about today. The kindgoods.com is the dispensary website today. Any other of those assets you guys want to plug? One last opportunity to plug a site handle real quick before I hop you up out of here.
Yeah, we're IG, hit us up on the Kind Goods, Daybreak Grows, and Good Taste Edible, and Pinpoint Extract.
Yeah, Pinpoint Dash Extract.
Sold can at 420. You want me to keep going? We got time. Hold on.
I'm cutting you off, man. Cutting you off. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys. This is the North American Weed Tour podcast. We're looking at the best in legal cannabis across the map and beyond, man. This has been a great episode with these guys from Missouri, man. We'll be checking in more from their market, hopefully getting out there and seeing the lay of the land once it flips over to rec. Appreciate your guys' time, man. We'll be back with more content later this week.